Are you tired of the blind leading the blind? Are you ready to escape the 9-to-5 grind and build a life that truly makes you happy? Are you ready to build generational wealth for you and your family? If any of this sounds like you, then breathe easy, because you are exactly where you need to be right now. A wise man once said, "When the student is ready, the teacher shall appear." So have faith in what I said and follow the path. My name is Khadijah Lashaun, and I am the Black guidance counselor that my community needs. I'm a strategic investor and CEO. I make money in my sleep, and I teach others how to do the same. I share my knowledge, talents, and resources with others. So if you're in need of that motivation or courage to start following your own path, look no further. My intention is to share as much value with you all as possible and to show you that there are many different paths to happiness and many different paths to wealth. You just have to find the one that's right for you.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly. Can you hear me?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay, awesome. It's Marc, right?
It's Mark, yep.
Nice to meet you. My name is Khadijah Lashaun. Just giving you a heads up, once you take your, if you take your headphones out, it'll stop recording. Just letting you know.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah. But how are you doing today?
Good, can't complain. Just trying to adjust into the Monday after a long weekend. Just trying to knock out a bunch of stuff. Definitely look forward to the podcast episode.
Absolutely. So, before we start, is there any questions that you have for me or questions about the podcast or anything like that?
Yeah, I kind of want to know what the podcast is all about, maybe a little bit about you as well.
Absolutely. So, like I said, my name is Khadijah Lashaun, also known as your Black guidance counselor. My entire intention with everything is to guide people to the resources that they need. Those resources can be housing, they can be educational resources, or just knowledge from my experiences and stuff like that. So that's pretty much what I'm about. I'm on YouTube, Instagram. I started off on Instagram about basically before the pandemic. Um, Back then I was working a corporate job. I had just purchased my home like the year before, so that's where I was. But I quit my job kind of like very rashly, but it turned out okay. My intention was to get a real estate degree, but my test was scheduled on like March 13th or something like that. And on the day of the test, they shut everything down. And they didn't tell us. Yeah, and then the thing is, I finished my course. I passed the course. I took the test to pass the course in person. And then literally the next week was my licensing test. And God was just like, nope, you can't do that. So it was just like, okay, what do I do now? So
What happened, my earphones are like somewhat dead. So okay. I think they died on me. So exactly what you said was going to happen ended up happening. So
it's
I
okay.
apologize.
No worries. What was the last thing you heard from me?
So you're just talking about how you like left your job and it was somewhat rash, but it worked out for you.
Yeah, so it worked out. I had to really I was going through some emotional, mental stuff there. But basically it was a part of my spiritual journey and coming into myself and realizing what am I I don't want to just sell people on something. I don't want to just create something just to sell to people. I want to make an impact, So it was kind of really connecting to God, getting closer to God and understanding my purpose. And the whole Your Black guidance counselor thing, it really came up because I do Lyft. So I drive Lyft in Baltimore City. So I see people all day long. I interact with everybody. A lot of people like to talk to me or like to vent and stuff like that. So a lot of times when I'm talking to someone, I'll be saying something and I'm just thinking I'm just being normal, but I'm saying what they really need to hear. So with that, like, I would get like a lot of people saying like, wow, that's confirmation of exactly what I was already thinking. Like, you just said it, so it's just like crazy. So I also share a lot of value. Like, naturally in me, I don't charge people to just tell them something. Like, if I know how to do it and I can just tell you real quick, I'm gonna just tell you, because it's not that serious. It's not that serious to me. I feel like that's something I'm working on, because I definitely want to monetize my gift. Because I do have a lot of gifts. Like, I was a film major in college. I was a psychology major. I graduated, like all this stuff. And I did event planning. Like, I have a lot of skills. So it's just like bringing it all together right now. So,
Cool. That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
the podcast, as far as that's concerned, it's overall just about entrepreneurial journeys, sharing the stories of Black creators. Like, and that could be a business owner, it could be an influencer, it could be an artist. Just, we're all creators because we all come from God. That's how I feel. So I share their entrepreneurial journey, and if they have any spiritual guidance or advice and stuff like that. Like, I'm literally guiding people to resources. That's the whole thing. So, hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I couldn't hear you before.
Yeah, I think what's going on is so I don't use I'm not using the headset anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But also, if my phone the light turns off and it locks, then I'm not. So I need to just make sure it doesn't lock, which should be fine.
So you turned it on your settings. You turned the display timer off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
cool.
what I did.
Okay, cool.
So, good.
All right, cool. Do you have any questions?
Nope. Good to go.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'm just gonna get started, and then I'm just gonna let the ideas flow. Like, I already have an overall what I want to know, but feel free to like overshare. Like, don't feel like you are talking too long. Like, you'd be surprised. A lot of people will see you and they can relate to you, and they're just like, wow, like, I didn't know there was other people out there like me. Like, I didn't know that you could find other ways to impact people and build a career and stuff like that. So don't feel afraid to give all of what you have to say.
Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you.
Okay, perfect.
All right. You good to go?
Good to go.
All right. Today's episode was recorded via Anchor by Spotify and re-uploaded online. Hello, everyone. My name is Khadijah Lashaun, also known as your Black Guidance Counselor. I am here to guide you to the resources that you need. Today, I have Marc, also known as BetterWallet on Instagram. He is an ex-finance. You're an ex-finance, right? Like, you're not in finance anymore, but...
Right, yeah. I retired from corporate finance.
So you retired from corporate finance. I was in corporate finance too, bro. So we got some stuff to talk about. Okay. So now you have BetterWallet. So tell us a little bit more about what BetterWallet is and what do you represent?
Yeah. So put simply, the goal of BetterWallet is to help people manage their money the right way. So essentially, I take everything that I have gone through, from foster care to grow up in a low income family, to putting myself through college, to becoming a stockbroker, then eventually a financial advisor, and trying to bucket it, or trying to wrap it all into the BetterWallet platform. So we have free resources. We have different coaching opportunities as well, and coaching resources to really help you invest, pay off debt, budget your money, and essentially put money away for the future.
So budgeting, basically how to manage your finances, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay, that's good. That's stuff that people need to know. All right, so before we get into more about BetterWallet, let's talk a little bit about you, Marc. Can you tell me a little bit more about your childhood? How did you grow up?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of my childhood was in foster care. So, both my mom and my mom and dad, biological mom and dad, they were, they were, pretty much addicted to all types of different drugs when I was, from being conceived to being born. So I came out as like a preemie baby, crack baby, if you will. And I was immediately put into foster care. So bounced from foster care to foster care, group home to group home as, a young kid. And then eventually I was adopted at the age of 13. But I was adopted to a fairly low income, family. fairly low income, town. I want to say it's one of the poorest towns in the country.
Wow.
So it was interesting because I didn't know that we were poor. Though I got free lunch or reduced lunch or what have you, and there were people around me that had more money. I just assumed that was just life, right? Everyone,
Yeah.
everyone around me, for the most part, they were living the same way that I was living. Worked similar jobs to my mom and my dad. So money was tight, but you never really felt that way because again, it was life. So my dad was my dad was a warehouse worker, so he pretty much moved boxes from left to right, from one conveyor belt to another. And my
Mm-hmm.
mom was a high security prison guard. So both of those jobs were, decent jobs for my area. So that, allowed them to put food on the table and such. But there wasn't anything that we did that was lavish, right? Like there was nothing that we did that, you know, showed you that we had any sort of money. It was just the life that we lived. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, ramen noodle dinners and hot dog dinners were normal. I
I
didn't I
understand.
didn't realize until much later in life that that's not the way you're supposed to feed children, but that's neither here nor there. But growing up, my dad was really big on, making sure I had, income sources and side hustles and, I knew how to bring in money. So he was from the South and his whole mentality was, the guy needs to be, bringing in money. You need to, take care of your family. You need to provide for your family. You need to work hard. So,
Mm-hmm.
I was doing odd jobs my entire childhood. So, mowing grass, cleaning cars, whatever I could do legally in order to make
Yeah.
money. It's essentially what I did. Shoveling walks, right? I perfected the upsell, right? Like, hey, like, I could shovel your walk, but if you want me to put salt on your driveway, it's going to cost you this much. And if
Mm-hmm.
you get it now, I could actually give you a discount, right? So you like
Yeah.
learn that at a very young age how to kind of hustle and put
Market
money in your
yourself.
pocket, right? So
Yeah.
so as a kid, I would be the one that saved a lot of money. My sisters, unfortunately, were not the same way. They would, as soon as they made money, they would spend it. So they would, ask me for money as a kid, even though they're older than me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just like how I grew up. I was rather frugal when I was younger, as I am now, and yeah, so over time you kind of learn how to manage your money. But at that time, I was just putting it under the mattress. Like anytime I made it, I was just throwing it underneath the mattress, and I thought it was interesting, like when you can have like money accumulated underneath your mattress,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that you have more money than most people around you was
Yeah.
fascinating as a kid. But yeah, I mean that was money, like my money tale, if you will, when I was growing up. Didn't really have too much, but always knew how to generate it.
Yeah. That makes complete sense. So, okay. Um, do you wanna is it okay if I ask more about your childhood?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So, can you tell me a little bit about how you got into foster care and like how much time you spent there?
Yeah, so as soon as I was born, the foster care system essentially said your parents are not suited to take care of you. They
Mm-hmm.
were going from crack house to crack house, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they had no business having a kid, let alone an underweight preemie kid, as they're doing what they were doing. So the
Mm-hmm.
state essentially took me away from them, and I went through foster care for 13 years.
Wow.
Yep. So yeah, and then at 13, I was adopted by the family in small town Pennsylvania. It's called Mount Union, Pennsylvania.
So that's your family now.
Correct, correct. So that's my adopted family, which is only the only family I know.
So you never reconnected with your biological parents?
I did later in life. So luckily, my adopted family stayed in touch with my biological mom. My
Mm-hmm.
biological mom and dad. They're you know I don't even call them separate. I don't even think they were ever together. I think it was just something happened. I was conceived, and
I
it gets
understand.
real in those situations.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So eventually, it got to the point where my parents said, "Hey, like I want you to know who your biological mother is. We still keep in touch with her. She lives in Philly." So over time, they would bring her into that, the small town, and I didn't really know anything about her, besides like she, used to be on drugs and things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
when people say, "Hey, it's your biological mom," you're like, "Wait, but like you're my mom, right? Like my adopted mom is my mom," and I didn't know
Yeah.
who this lady was. And even now, like she's more of like a distant cousin than anything, right? Like we don't really have that solid of a relationship because I wasn't really raised with her.
I
We
understand.
have like not much of a connection.
That makes
Um,
sense.
but um, by all glory to God, I ended up meeting my biological dad not too long ago. 3 years ago is when I met him. I took a test. What is it called? Ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I just wanted to know what part of Africa my family was from, and then I kind of stumbled on who my biological dad was indirectly.
Wow.
So that's that could be another podcast, but the short of it is I took the test on ancestry. They tell you, hey, like this person is your third cousin based off of genetics, and I reach out to that third cousin. She said, "Hey, you look like my Uncle Charles." I said, "Hey, it's probably my uncle too. Maybe he knows my dad." And next thing you know, I found out that he actually lived in Philly, not too far away from me in West Philly. Yeah, I had a
Wow.
conversation, and he was like, "Oh, I have like 10 side hustles. I'm doing this. I'm driving Uber. I'm doing this." And he was like, "Oh yeah, and I'm also retired." And I'm just like, "Wait, you're doing all this in retirement?" I'm like, "This dude is my dad. Like, there's absolutely no way. He looks just like me."
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up going and doing ancestry as well. I remember driving. I was going somewhere in New Jersey, and he texted me. He said, "Hey, based off of this result, it's saying that it's 99% sure that he is my dad." Right. So
Wow.
again, driving, I get this text message. I almost swerve off the
I
road
understand. I
because that's
understand.
yeah. Because at this age, or at the time, I was what was I, 27, 28. So
Mm-hmm.
I lived 28 years of my life not really knowing who my biological dad was. I was never really searching him out. Life was fine. I didn't really have a hole in my heart thinking about who he was. But it's funny how God said, "Hey, like I want this guy in your life," and luckily, we have a decent relationship. I would say
That's good.
we probably have the best relationship out of my other parents. I mean, my adopted dad ended up passing away, but my adopted mom is still alive. My biological
Mm-hmm.
mom is still alive, but my strongest relationship is with my biological dad. Yeah,
Wow. That's amazing.
yeah,
You could write a whole you could get a whole documentary on your life, man.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
That's like
that's
a whole TV show right there. Like
yeah,
you seen Switched at Birth, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, same thing. That's crazy. Wow. That's
yeah.
amazing.
So I love telling this story because unfortunately, I'm not the only one, right? There's so many people I've connected with, let it be adoptees or people who their mom or dad maybe left like when they were really young, and
Mm-hmm.
they want to trace back to that family member to rekindle that relationship. So I try to tell a story in case someone is interested. So 20,
Yeah,
23andMe is one, and then ancestry.com is another one, if you guys want to check it out and trace back to your roots.
absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that. Okay, cool. Um, all right. So, what were you like in middle school? Like, what kind of kid were you in middle school?
I was that bookworm, where um, I hyper focused on my academics because I knew I wanted to escape my town and I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
do different from what other people were doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was that kid, studying every night to, just get better at, whatever the topic would have been. I was definitely a jock, right? Like if I wasn't doing or studying and I wasn't in the books, then I was on the basketball court, I was playing football, I was doing anything that kept me from having to hang around my small town.
Mm.
Um, so every single sport that I had access to besides golfing, I did, cross country, track, football, basketball, like whatever. So, at that time I was hitting my growth spurt. So, I was, much taller and I was an okay athlete. And then, I did well academically. So that's essentially what I, did in middle school, just trying to
Okay.
balance those two things.
So high school was kind of like the same thing.
Yeah, so going into high school, so we didn't actually have like a junior high at that time because of how small the school was. They just merged everyone together.
Okay.
High school is when I really got serious on, going to college and doing whatever I needed to do in order to prepare myself. So I joined this program called Upper Bound, which is essentially a trio program, if you're familiar with the trio programs,
Mm-mm.
that
I'm not.
essentially bridge a gap between college, like 4-year colleges, and kids who are from small towns,
Okay.
low income small towns.
Mm-hmm.
And I credit them to a lot of my success from jumping from high school to college. Because I mean, I went to Penn State, so Penn State 60 at the time it was like 60,000 students. I graduated with 100 people. I think it was like close to like 95. So
Wow.
it was a culture shock for me,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a culture shock for a lot of kids that are in a situation like I was. So that financially it was tough, and Upper Bound helped out with that. And then I'm going to college with people who might went to these private schools, or maybe they went to one of those those academies that their parents are paying for,
Very
and
different vibes.
very different. We spoke a completely different language because
Mm-hmm.
essentially I'm from the hood and they're just from Bel Air, and like
Yeah.
so it was an adjustment going from high school to college, but Upper Bound really helped out with that. So
Okay.
it got more and more serious. Took SATs, ACTs. I don't even know if they still do those now, but did okay on those and essentially applied to school. And once I got into Penn State, the transition from high school to college began.
Mm.
So that was a lot of fun. Just kind of getting ready for college and just being excited to be in a different place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Getting away from home, coming into yourself a little bit, getting to know yourself outside of your parents' influence.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, was college a good experience for you?
College was interesting. I mean, I love college. I learned a lot. The coursework was, it was rigorous. I learned a lot, from the books. I learned a lot about myself too. Like how do I study? Like how do I cope with anxiety? How do I
Mm.
manage a course load? How do you have a social life, but also work on being successful at the same time? Picking
Yeah.
the right friends. Like all those things are incredibly important. You learn that in college, and not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily in the books. So, college was a challenge though. Like I didn't have money to go through school, and luckily I was able to beg the student aid office enough to get scholarships and loans and grants.
That's a blessing.
Yeah, but I shortened that because I mean that's a whole other podcast of like how I was able to essentially do that. But they knew me on a first name basis, and I essentially walked in, said, "Hey, my grades are okay, and I have no money, so you guys have to figure it out." Um, so that was that.
So you
You
were
know,
flirting with them, basically.
no,
He was
no,
like, "Come pay my tuition, girl."
no,
Like
I
just
wish
press
it,
delete.
I wish it was that easy, right?
I wish, I
But
know, right? It'd be so
yeah,
easy. Like, yeah, free college, free
yeah.
tuition.
But it was more of like learning how to negotiate and like knowing how to sell myself, and sell my story.
Hmm.
So I was able to tell my story at a very early age, and luckily people believed in me.
Yeah.
So tell the puppy I said what up.
No, sometimes that's how it is.
Yeah,
Seriously, because You tell your story and people want to help you. They want to support you. They'll tell you which way to go. But if you don't
Exactly.
tell your story, nobody knows how to help you.
Exactly. So I was blessed to, find some people in the Penn State network that really cared, and, they helped out, and Upper Bound helped out as well. So,
That's good.
um, yeah, I mean, college was a challenge. You learn a lot. You're going to a pretty decent school.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt like you were drinking out of a fire hose at time, but you learn the power of networking and having other people teach you what you need to know.
Yeah.
Um, so eventually over time you get your act together, and my grades weren't always that great, but you learn, and next thing you know, graduation's there, and you think back and you're like, man, I had to claw my way through, but I'm here.
Bruh. C's get degrees. You ain't here?
Mm-hmm.
C's get degrees, y'all. So
Amen.
just get through the door. Just get through the door and close it. Don't not finish. Then it's a waste. It's a waste.
Exactly. I hear you.
But I got you. Okay. So what would you say is the biggest lesson that you learned? Because you said a lot of things that you learned, but what is like, maybe give me an example or experience that you went through that you went through in college that really taught you something important?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest learning moments for me is just being comfortable with like elevating yourself and putting you in situations where you're not the smartest person in the room, and
Mm-hmm.
you're surrounded by people that want to see you do well. And I think
Yeah.
that's really key. Yeah, I remember I was writing an essay. It was for my freshman year English class, right? And I took AP English in high school, and I thought I was a pretty decent writer. But I remember someone was proofreading one of my papers. Good guy, he was he was in the military, and he obviously was doing well academically, and he was reading my paper, and he was like, I don't know how the position is, but just to say it right, this is how like some of the military guys are. They're just straightforward. My dad was in
Yeah.
the military, so like I got it. And he was like, "You're writing these papers as if you're still in high school. I want you to elevate your, I want you to elevate your writing, like I know you can, so people take you more seriously."
Mm.
Right. And for me, I actually got offended at first. I was like, why would he say that? Like, who does he think he is? Like, what? Like, are we like, let's throw hands? And then I got to the point where I was just like, wait, let me actually think about what he's saying. He's saying that I can actually be more than what I am right now if I just applied myself and I didn't do the bare minimum. Like the
Mm.
paper that I wrote was just like, I just, kind of scrapped something together.
Yeah.
And what he was saying is that you need to elevate yourself. And I'm happy he gave me that feedback. I think about it all the time. I think and I know people take me more seriously, not only when I have my 9 to 5, but also with the BetterWallet podcast
Mm-hmm.
podcast, the whole platform.
Mm-hmm.
Instagram is because I try my best every day to elevate myself. How can I be in, I talk to people all the time. They're like, and they're saying is like, how can I be in the right room? Like, how can I be in, the right room? And I think about that all the time, because now I'm like, okay, well, should I attend that conference? Should I attend that meeting? Should I listen to that podcast? Should I, network with that one
Show up.
person?
Show up.
And that showing up has helped to elevate me little by little,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm in those rooms. I'm being challenged. I'm like, people who are around me want to see me do well, but at the same time they'll call me out on my BS if I have any. Right, like, you're
Mm-hmm.
being lazy, or you could do this better. This course could be even better. So that was probably one of my biggest learning moments, is that people aren't going to believe in you unless you really believe in yourself. And if you believe in yourself, you'll produce much better work versus like not believing in yourself. So that was one of my
Absolutely.
biggest takeaways from college.
Absolutely. And if anybody's listening, what he's saying is that he put himself out there. He put himself out
Mm-hmm.
there, and now he's in new rooms, reaching bigger audiences and getting more of an impact on people, more people knowing his name, more people, engaging with his content and stuff like that. So it's just it says a lot that, you know, you have to go get what you pray for. You can't just want something. You got to go get it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be scared to go get it. Even if it's uncomfortable, because all growth is uncomfortable. It's not going to be comfortable getting to the status that you'd like to get to, you know?
Exactly.
It's not going to be easy either.
Yeah, you'll have those growing pains, but as you grow, then you'll get more comfortable, and then you get to the point where just I want to grow some more, right? Like
Mhm.
I always use Jay-Z as an example. Jay-Z didn't go from just being a rapper to what he is today,
Yeah.
billionaire with Beyonce.
Mhm.
He had to learn along the way. He was in the right rooms. He had to grow. He took feedback, right? He had, some things that he had ventures that flopped and he got feedback saying it's trash, right? And then like,
Mhm.
over time, he got better and better and better. I think a lot of people see the success, but they don't understand what they had to go through in order to get there. Like a
Yeah.
lot of people had to go through the mud, like including myself, in order to get to where I'm at.
Mhm.
But I made sure every single day I showed up. I made sure every single day I challenged myself, and
Mhm.
that's how you get to the Jay-Z and Beyonces of the world.
Yeah. And even I'm sure, and you mentioned something too. You said not only did you put yourself out there, you took feedback, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You listened to people who knew what they were talking about. Like, I feel like it's important we're mindful of who we listen to, because someone could lead you in the wrong direction. Like,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, positively. They could, you know, when you told that story just now of that teacher telling you, like, you are writing in high school style, like, when you told me the rest of the story, I can understand why you react, like, you took it in a positive way. But
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like sometimes you have to believe in yourself and follow your intuition too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if your intuition, so like sometimes somebody will try to give you advice and say, hey, no, you shouldn't do that, or maybe you should cut back on this. But if you know what you're doing and you did your research and you listen to the right feedback, then you should feel confident in every decision that you make. You know,
Amen. Yeah.
like you have to trust yourself more than you trust other people, because you know everything about you.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
what you can bring to the table.
You want to make the right decisions that are going to put you in the best position.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell some of my mentees, they're like, I don't know, like, people are telling me to do this, I think I should do that. And I'm like, do whatever you feel like your heart is telling you to do, and just
Absolutely.
go for it. When I
Mm-hmm.
quit my job 2 months ago, people were just like, oh, why'd you do it? Like, what was the perfect formula that you used to figure out that you should quit your job? I said happiness. I knew I'd be happy without my 9 to 5, and I work for
Mm-hmm.
myself. And they're just
Yeah.
like, "Wait, really? You're chasing happiness? That's like your metric?" I was like, "Sure. There's some metrics. Like, I want to make sure I can pay for my living expenses. Time
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4. Like, I have a fund where if everything goes to hell, like I would be okay for multiple years."
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think Steve Harvey said it perfectly. He always says, you have to jump. You have to jump, and you just have to pray that you've done everything in the background over the last couple of years to, make sure that you grow wings, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't smack your face off the off the cement,
Well,
right?
you will, but it's
Yeah,
okay.
get
It's
up.
okay. Get back up again. You're
Yeah,
gonna hit your face
exactly.
a couple times.
Yeah, I think he was saying that, as you're going down, like if you're jumping off a cliff, for example, I think that's the analogy that he was using.
Mm-hmm.
Jumping off the cliff, you're going to hit some boulders, you're going to hit some trees, you're going to be, just falling. It's going to seem like you're free falling, but eventually you'll get to the point where you feel that level of comfort. And even if you do smack your face, as long as you continue to move forward, then that is progress, because most people don't take that jump and they're just comfortable, being in the status quo.
Absolutely. Or they fall on their face and they don't get back up.
Yeah, exactly.
So get back up, y'all. Get back up. Okay.
Hmm.
I've fallen on my face many times in my life, literally and figuratively. Okay. So it's okay. It's all right. But okay, cool. I like this conversation. We're going somewhere here. Okay. Cause I'm excited to hear about this whole corporate finance thing. Cause
Hmm.
yeah, we got to talk about that. But before we get there, what did you major in college and what did you do in your free time?
Yeah, so in college, I majored in economics and international business.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't get into finance, the finance degree, because I needed a 3.7, which is almost impossible to get, especially right after your freshman year, and you're adjusting to school in college.
Mm-hmm.
So I took the level below that where I studied economics, business economics, which is pretty much the same thing without some of the finance courses, and then international business. Because I was really fascinated with like what was going on in the European and Asian markets. So it's something I really cared about. So that was my major. During my free time, I so the number one priority was how can I generate income in order to pay for school.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, so I did a bunch of side hustles. I was selling, plasma, which is a completely different story.
I know, right? I
I
done
was,
looked at that a couple of times.
yeah, I was a barber. I was cutting hair. Um, I ran a, barbershop out of my dorm room. I was a referee for the intramural sports league. Literally, I'm working with like small companies, helping them to market.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, I was like handing out flyers for certain companies. Like, I don't know if they're still around, but Chegg.com was
Okay.
a company I marketed for.
The
They,
textbooks.
yep, yep,
Yeah.
exactly. So I used to market for them. So that was a lot of my free time. Otherwise, Penn State was and still is a pretty big party school. I want to say at the time it was like a number one or number two party school, so we had our
Mm.
fun. Um,
I believe it.
so yeah, so Thursday,
It's
Friday, Saturday,
Pennsylvania.
I was out having a blast. Because Penn State's in the middle of nowhere, so you're kind of
Exactly.
surrounded around a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
other Penn Staters. It's not like some of these schools around here, like the schools in DC, where you have a city around you. You literally just have
The
kids that are all
school.
trying to have
Yeah.
fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
After a week of a lot of work. So that was a lot of my free time. Um, different organizations. Like I did, a mentoring organization. Um, I was a part of, like I would help out with the Upper Bound program when
Mm-hmm.
I was there. So kind of giving back
Yeah.
to the community. But yeah,
Instagram is giving back too.
yeah, yeah.
You share a lot of tips. If anybody's wondering about finance, you need to. I'm gonna give you some promo right here, okay? Because seriously, if you guys are, we need to know about our finances. We need to understand how to manage our finances. And so, Mark at BetterWallet, he's gonna make you have a better wallet. You understand? Okay, he's gonna
Yeah,
make you have a
her.
better wallet. Okay,
Yeah,
so
there you go.
he got the name for a reason. But
Amen. Yep.
so what I was gonna say is, okay, so you mentored, you gave back some time, you worked outside of school, you
Hmm.
were a economics major, business economics. Okay, so tell me about how did you get into the workforce? What did you have to do? And yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah. So when I applied for school my senior year, it was a weird time for Penn State because my senior year is when the Penn State scandal all happened with
Mm-hmm.
like Joe Paterno and the football team and things like that, which I won't dive into the details, but you can Google it.
Yeah.
But it was a lot for the university. It was a very trying time for the community in general, just because of what happened.
I'm sorry.
Um,
Could you repeat that one more time?
what specifically happened,
Yeah.
or
Well, yeah, what happened?
yeah, so pretty much what happened was back in I want to say the 80s or 90s, there was this football coach that essentially sexually harassed like a bunch of like little boys through this
Wow.
this program that he owned and organized, and it happened over the course of I want to say 10 to 15 years, right? So
Wow.
well before anyone that was currently in college was even born, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that was happening, and it was that, and what specifically happened as a response, because what they end up finding out is that people at very high positions at Penn State knew that it was happening, but didn't report it in the way that they should have, including the head coach at that time, Joe Paterno. So the head coach, as well as the president and athletic director at the time, who, they're all still alive at that point, they all knew what was happening. At least they knew about the rumors, and they didn't report it in the way that they should. And unfortunately, that led to more and more of, boys getting sexually, harassed. And it was a whole mess.
That's crazy.
I just feel bad for the families and of the victims.
Absolutely.
But it's one of those type of things where I'm happy that the people who did that, they're either not here anymore or they're locked away forever, and that's where they belong. But all of that kind of came out November of my senior year, so I understood what was going on, but at the same time, you put all this work into getting a degree, and people are coming by and said, "Hey, like, we're not gonna hire Penn Staters this year."
Wow.
And it was a big deal. You work your ass off, and then next thing you know, something like that comes out. And it's not in any of your control, and you weren't involved, right? So it was tough. So you're applying to all these schools, and you really get in. I mean, it was that. I think there was an element of maybe racism as well. I'm a black male trying to get into the finance world. It's I don't fit their mold in a way. So I think that was an element of it, because from my perspective and the perspective of others, I had a pretty solid case on why you would want to hire me. So long story short, I ended up applying for Vanguard, which is the largest mutual fund company in the world. They weren't at the time, but they are now. And luckily, I got into one of their management development programs.
That's a blessing there.
That's how I got into the finance world. And I didn't know anything about finance at that time, besides, what was happening on Wall Street back in, 2008, 2009, because of the Great Recession. But otherwise, I didn't really know all too much about the direct application of, finances for people. Like, I come from the hood. Like, no one's talking about IRAs and ETFs and such.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead. My bad. Keep going. I have a tendency to interrupt. My bad.
No, all good. I was just gonna say, I became a stockbroker at that time, and became a manager at Vanguard, and that was my first, couple years out of college.
Okay. All right. So, you did economics, and now you're doing finance, and then you jumped in there. So you mentioned a little bit about, you not fitting the mold, and just being a Black person trying to get into the financial field. How many interviews did you get a no before you got a yes?
So I would say close to 30.
Wow.
Interviews. So it's not only I applied to hundreds of schools or hundreds of companies, but it was rare that I got a first round interview. And in my head, I was like, okay, if I get a first round interview, then I'll be good. But I walk in, and it's interesting because my name, for example, doesn't scream Black male.
Yeah,
right?
It doesn't.
My formal name is Michael Russell. So like, they look at it and they're like, okay, well, he's probably a white male. This is all assumptions. Like, I'm assuming this is probably what went through their head. Right. And they have that bias. I mean, we all have biases, right? Like, it's a normal part of human nature. Not that it's right, but it's, you think one way when you see someone. And I think they were shocked when they saw that I was a Black male with my background, right? Like, I did well in school. I was an RA, like, I have management skills. I was essentially managing a business while doing that. Like, I was juggling a lot. Yeah. And, I had good references, and they were shocked, right?
They didn't believe you.
They didn't believe me. So a lot of first round interviews, I went into it kind of knowing that they weren't going to pick me up. And then next thing you know, I got the denial letter. So it was just interesting kind of dealing with that. And, it wasn't until, Vanguard took a chance on me and I had that on my resume and, had the, what do they call it? I had the track record that they wanted, that they were just like, okay with me being a black male. So that's essentially how that went. But at a certain point, you become so good.
You said you had a track record? What do you mean?
Track record, as in like they could trace back and say, okay, well, he was able to bring this much money into, Vanguard. He has a strong resume.
Once you got the one position, like once you got that management position under your belt, it was easier to get other positions and stuff like that.
Right. Because for them, it's unfortunately, because I don't fit the mold, I have to work even harder. Like my resume has to be flawless.
Yeah.
I have to show them the numbers and say, hey, this is how I can help out your company. And, you can't necessarily do that when you're in college. Like the amount of variables is, somewhat limited in a way. So once you go to a company like that and you prove that you're a hard worker, you prove that you can, turn the dial and help them grow as a company, then it becomes easier because at that point they're like, I don't care. Like in the finance world, we will always say like, we won't see black, we don't see white, we see green, right? Like, how much money can you make me?
Yeah.
So that's something I realized over time once I did get into the door. And then I have that track record. Like they only see green at the end of the day. Like, how can you make our company grow, for better or for worse?
That makes sense. Okay, so and they see customers that way too, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Exactly.
Okay, so let me ask you something. What is a mutual fund, and what type of work does a mutual fund broker do?
Yeah. So, so a mutual fund, I'll break that down a little bit. So I think most people know what stocks are, but essentially, if you had the Black Creator Podcast company, and you said, hey, like I want someone to essentially pay me more money so I can use that money to build other podcasts or to hire talent or whatever, you can essentially incorporate your business and people can buy shares of your company. And
Like
then you'll
an S corp, right?
I guess you can with an S corp. But most of the time it's like what they call a C corp or just like a regular corporation.
Okay.
So an S corp is, not to get technical, but like an S corp, you can only have so many shares. I want to say you can only have like 100 shares.
Okay.
But like a C corp, like Tesla or Apple or what have you, they have millions of shares that people can buy.
And what are shares? Like, break it down. Break it down for us.
So when you buy into a company, again, the example of the Black Creator Podcast, if your company was incorporated, people can actually buy shares of that company or buy pieces of ownership. So, for example, I own Amazon. I have 3 shares of Amazon. I'm a part owner of Amazon, albeit I'm a minority owner, meaning that like I don't own more than 50%. Like I don't own the company like Bezos probably does.
But you still own it.
But I'm a partial owner. So why am I explaining stocks and how they work is you have stocks, and then imagine a basket of stocks that you could buy. So instead of just buying one, you could buy 500 or 1,000. That is essentially what a mutual fund is, where you're buying in and you get access to the Teslas, the Apples, the Amazons, name the big companies probably in some of the largest mutual funds. And the beauty of it is, if I buy into, I don't know, Tesla, and Elon Musk, who is the CEO and founder of Tesla, decides that he's going to just, not work with the business anymore and he was going to just plummet the stock, right? I could lose all my money if I'm just in one stock. But if I'm in a mutual fund, it gives you what they call diversification, meaning that, if one stock were to fall, you have 500 other ones that would need to fall in order for it to directly impact you. So that's why a lot of people jump into mutual funds and not those individual stock positions, because you have that diversification, and because you have diversification, you have less risk. But unfortunately, the headlines typically favor the individual stocks instead of like these mutual funds that are safer and can kind of give you more consistent growth over time.
Okay. So is mutual funds an FTF? I mean ETF, or am I even saying it right? ATF? ETF.
ETF. So
Okay.
so they're let's say they're cousins, right? Like they're along the same vein. Like the concept is the same, but
Hmm.
they do things differently. So with a mutual fund, so an ETF came around because the asset managers or the people who kind of run these mutual funds said, hey, like we want to make it more efficient. We want to make this even better. So like what's a mutual fund 2.0 where we could decrease the fees, have like the diversification, the amount of stocks in there, but we want it to be more, a little bit more streamlined in a way. And then on top of that, we want people to be able to buy a basket of stocks, but make it very specific to what they want to go after. For
Like a
example,
category, right?
yeah, a specific category. So if you wanted to buy an ETF that only invests into like the bigger like brands, like clothing brands, you
Mm-hmm.
can. Or if you want to buy an ETF that only invests into like your favorite liquor brands, like Hennessy or whatever, you can buy that ETF. They have ETFs literally for everything. They made an ETF for companies that are in the news more often than others. Like so, they're constantly building these ETFs, and the beauty is that they're cheaper. With a mutual fund, it tends to be on the higher side. Like sometimes it's like $1,000 to $3,000 to get in, but an ETF you can get in for sometimes like 20-25 bucks,
Wow.
and still have the benefits of a mutual fund, but a little bit more efficient and they're cheaper. So what I like about ETFs is that an ETF stands for exchange traded funds.
Okay.
Um, what I like about ETFs is that it gives us like our people access, right? Like people who for years haven't been advantaged in a way where they could invest. Like a lot of investing has been held away from us people, like us Black folks, and it's unfair. And unfortunately, because of system, I mean, I don't get me started, but like,
I
because
know,
of
right?
systematic racism, like
Yes.
and our inability to access certain capital, we aren't able to, a lot of our friends and family aren't able to access mutual funds for $1,000, $3,000,
Yeah.
especially if they're like, families like mine where we're just trying to figure out how we're going to put food on the table for the week.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can jump into an ETF, you can have direct access to the market and you can invest your money and grow it over time, without having to dish out $1,000, $3,000.
Okay.
So that's the beauty of that.
So are you for mutual funds?
I think there is a place for mutual funds. Like there are certain things that mutual funds can do that ETFs cannot. Again, not to get technical, but like you can't what they call DCA into a mutual fund, meaning dollar cost average. So when you put money into a mutual fund, you can essentially buy it every day at 4 p.m. Eastern. Like that's when you buy, and you can DCA in or dollar cost average in, by, and what that means is that you're incrementally putting money into the market, right? And like, you can do that every single day at 4 p.m. Eastern. You cannot incrementally put money into an ETF and kind of have it on autopilot
Mm-hmm.
like you can with a mutual fund. Again, getting really, really technical, but there's like little idiosyncrasies of mutual funds that you don't necessarily have with ETFs. So, but
So
I think there is a place for mutual funds, but they're, ETFs are known as mutual fund 2.0 for a reason. So I much rather stick with ETFs if I can get the same benefits, but more efficient.
You ever talk to Wall Street Trapper?
He was actually in Philly this
Yeah.
weekend.
Really?
Yeah, no, he I don't know him personally. Obviously I know what he does, and I think he does an amazing job, making people, like, teaching people that Wall Street looks like us now. It's like his big slogan.
Yeah.
And it's true, because we are, as I mentioned, with the advent of ETFs and people understanding investing little by little, they're actually getting into the market, and now we're a force to be reckoned with, because there's a lot of Black investors out there. Let it be the Jay-Z of the world, or people who have thousands to hundreds of thousands into the market. Like, they have to appeal to what we want, because if a company comes out and says, hey, like, we don't support whatever the campaign is, and Black people don't like that, we're going to pull our money out. And for generations it wasn't like that. So yeah, I love what he does. I've reached out to him before, but obviously he is, he has a lot going on.
He does have a lot going on.
So, but yeah, I mean, I respect what he does. He's more on, I'm more on like the budgeting, paying off debt, and investing side. Like, I kind of wrap them all into each other, but he's more on like straight investing. I don't think there's a right or wrong way, but that's just more my philosophy versus his.
Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's about what works for you, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, cool. So, you said what a mutual fund is. I appreciate you giving that very detailed definition, because now I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get with the ETF, because low key, I'm gonna get with the ETFs because Robert Kiyosaki said we don't mess with the mutual funds. Why did he say that?
Yeah, I mean, probably along the same vein. ETFs tend to be a little bit more. I bucket it as saying efficient. Like, for example, if you wanted to go and buy a mutual fund right now, and you say, okay, I'm going to buy it right now at $200, or let's say $1,000, you won't actually get the price that you want until 4:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's when they calculate what they call the NAV, or the price of the mutual fund. So you don't actually get the price that you believe that you're going to get. So if you're like, I only have $1,000 and it goes up to $1,002, it won't actually invest into that mutual fund, because you technically don't have enough. With an ETF, you get the price on the spot. So if you're buying into, I'm trying to think of like a really popular, like Vanguard S&P 500 ETF, which just means that it invests into the 500 largest companies in the country. If you buy into that ETF, you get that price. So if it's $20 and you press submit and it's at $20, that's what you get. You don't have to wait until 4 p.m. Eastern. That's number one. Number two, because of how it's structured, it tends to be more tax efficient. I mean, it gets technical, but the ETFs tend to be more tax efficient, so it's cheaper. So instead of paying, I don't know, like 20, 25 basis points, which is essentially 25% of 1%, you can actually get in the ETFs at a very low fee. I think the ETF that I was just telling you about, Vanguard S&P 500 ETF, is actually like 3 basis points. So you're able to shave off that, which, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, people say, okay, well, how much is that really? It's not that much. Over a course of time, that adds up. That could be thousands of dollars that you could easily pass on to your children. And oh, by the way, because they're taking that fee that you would have paid to a mutual fund, that is keeping you away from being able to compound that dollar, right? So if they took $4,000 away from you, yeah, it's $4,000. But if you're passing this money on to your children, and they have 80 years of their life, that's 80 years of compounding that you're missing out on because it's going to fees. So that's the reason I assume he's saying, hey, like, we don't do, I wouldn't be as what's the word? Definitive about that, because I think
Okay.
there is a place for mutual funds,
Mm-hmm.
but I do agree um, with the idea that mutual funds tend to be less efficient than ETFs.
Absolutely. Okay. So, all right.
It's
Let
kind
me
of like
ask.
the Nike shoe to like Payless, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you can get good shoes at Payless, but they're probably going to cave in after some time. But if you get Nike shoes, like they're more efficient. They're built for the athlete.
You're
It's probably
saying
a
mu-
horrible analogy, but like it's a way to think about it.
you're saying
Um,
mutual funds are more the Nike or more the Payless? What? Because it sounds
no,
like you're saying ETFs are more the Payless, right?
no. I would say ETFs are more of Nike. Like they're efficient, they are sleek and sexy, right? Like they're built
Mm-hmm.
for the athlete. And then
Yeah.
you have the mutual funds, which they do their job, but they're kind of clunky in the way. That's why I related to Payless shoes.
Is it because of the human error?
No, I just think over time, I mean, these companies, these asset managers, the people who like Vanguard, for example, they get paid to make the investments, sexier and sexier. They want people to invest into their funds, so
Mm-hmm.
they take the feedback and they make them better. So as I mentioned, like mutual funds were the first iteration of the idea of putting stocks together and be able to invest into it all at once.
Mm.
And then the ETF was something that came out a little bit later. So the ETF is something that came along a little bit later after taking the feedback from other asset managers and other investors who said, "Hey, like I want it to be better."
Mm.
I'm trying to think of like a better example, like I don't know, like the old Buick versus like the new Buick, right? Like
Yeah.
back in the day, like like Buicks are great cars. Like my
Mm-hmm.
cousin has a Buick and it's from like the 1990s, and it
Wow.
still runs perfectly. It runs better than my car.
Wow.
Um, but Buick came out and said, you know what? I'm going to make Buick even better. I'm going to give you everything you love about the Buick, but we're going to make sure it's fuel efficient. We're going to make sure it's not clunky. We're going to make sure there's room in there. So, if someone was like, oh, well, which Buick should I get? Likely, I would recommend the new Buick because of all the features, but it doesn't mean that the old Buick is not good.
Okay.
I mean,
That's a very I got you. That makes complete sense. Okay.
mm-hmm.
All right. So we went on a little bit of a rabbit hole. Let me go back a little bit. So you didn't really explain what a mutual fund broker does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
definitely went on a tangent. Yeah, so what the brokers do, like a stockbroker is what they call it, even though you're being a broker. I don't even know. Yeah, a broker for
yeah. Mm-hmm.
mutual fund stocks, ETFs, like all types of different securities. But their job is to help clients essentially move their money and invest their money. So the day in the life of someone who is, a licensed stockbroker could be one of two things. It could either be someone who's actively trading those stocks, right? So you're trying to find the best stocks to invest in for the company. So as I mentioned with the S&P 500, like there's 500 stocks in there, and their job is to essentially find opportunities to make more money.
Mm.
That's like more on the technical side. I was like,
Okay.
I never wanted to do that. Like I would pull my hair out, the hair that I
It sounds
have.
like a lot.
Yeah. So they call them traders. And then you have people who are responsible for, people like you and I and our parents or grandparents who are trying to invest in money. And that's what I did. Where my job was, someone will call, I talk to them, say, hey, like, what are you trying to invest for? What is your goal? How much money do you have? How do you react to risk? Or, if the market were to fall like it is today,
Mm-hmm.
how would you react? And trying to find the appropriate investment for them so they can invest. Um, that was my job. So the day in the life of a stockbroker or someone who's a registered representative for one of these brokerage firms is normally that, where I'm helping people find the right investment for them.
Mm. So, did you like that work?
Yeah, it was good. I liked it in terms of what I learned. I learned a lot at a very young age. I learned how to invest. I learned from multimillionaires on like what they did in order to make a lot of money. Which I mean, people overcomplicate it, but really it's putting their money into investments and
Mm-hmm.
continue to do that every week, every month, whatever, and
Yep.
letting it ride and don't pull it out.
Yep.
So that was good, but at the same time, it was very reactionary, where I had to react to their concerns. So, some of the things I didn't like. Christmas time at the end of the year, people are calling in. Christmas Eve, hey, I want to invest my money. I want to invest before the end of the year, right? I want to be out with my family, but I have to
Mm-hmm.
be there, and I have to be there for the client because, again, it's reactionary.
Yeah.
So, over time, I kind of got annoyed of that. I like being there for the client, but not. I want to make sure I had like a balance in my life, and I felt like for my early years in the financial world, I didn't really have that balance. Over time, I found jobs that allowed me to have more of that balance. That I can help out clients, but I wasn't at the mercy of like when they wanted to call.
Mm.
So, it was good. It was good and bad. I learned a lot, but over time, you get older and you say, "Hey, like here are the things I like. Here's some of the things I don't like," and you pivot.
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
Sorry,
you're fine. What I was gonna say is, are you wearing AirPods or headphones?
AirPods.
Okay, so if you cough, just take the one with your mic on it and like hold it away from yourself, you know?
Yeah, it should be fun. I think it just had a quick coughing spell.
No worries. Okay, so all right. Um, what was it like working for Vanguard?
Vanguard was good. I mean, I really lucked out. The company is one that was really growing at the time. I mean, it's still growing. I mean, I think they're at 1 trillion when I was there, and now last time I checked, they were at like 5 or 6 trillion. So, like, obviously, like they're doing something right. Well, I was
Yeah.
there during an expansionary time. For the company, they were making a lot of changes. They were putting money in the right places, in my opinion. And Vanguard's the type of company that I feel like they do everything for the client, which every decision we made was okay. Well, how would the clients improve based off of this decision? Like literally every single decision, which is good and bad, right? Like the good is
Over
that we're
communicative.
yeah, like the good is the fact that we're helping people reach their specific goals,
Mm-hmm.
at a fairly low fee. The bad is that, you don't have a low fee company by overpaying your employees, right? So at
Mm-hmm.
the time of being there, I was there for, half of my career. I didn't really get paid that well. And they would sell you on the idea of, hey, like, we're not going to pay you that well because we don't want to take the money from the clients. But
What?
yeah, I can see if I was a robot, I get it. But I have a livelihood. Like I have things I need to pay for. I didn't have a family at that time, so
Mm.
if I had a family and had to put food on the table, I want to make sure that I'm being compensated appropriately. So
Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely.
I think every company has their pros and cons. Like I don't think there's no perfect company. Even Google, like I hear feedback from places like Google, people are like I hate it here. So every company has their quirks. The question is always like, what quirks can you deal with over a long period of time, and which ones can you not?
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay. So, where did you go after Van? Hold on. Wait 1 second. Um, what was your average work time? Like, how many hours a week were you putting in at Vanguard? And was it expected of you, or were you going above and beyond?
definitely going up and beyond. Like I didn't really take a lunch break or anything like that. So and I would come in early, stay late. So and I didn't work at home. Like when I got home, I didn't like log in or anything like that. So 9 to 10 hours a day was probably normal.
It's like 50
Give
hours a
or
week.
take. Yeah, give and take. And that was just because I mean I had so much going on. Like they didn't pay all too well, but they try to get every drop of work out of you. So I was somewhat managing like 6 to 7 different jobs that I was fully expected to execute on flawlessly. So
Yeah.
it was a challenge, but I wouldn't say that it was working at Vanguard compared to some of the other companies out there, these asset managers.
Mm-hmm.
I lucked out. Like if I was, at like Goldman Sachs, for example, they work ridiculous hours. They're also compensated really well, but they're working 60, 70 hour weeks, and I couldn't do that.
That's the norm for them too, and they
Yep.
think that's normal. Like
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
not normal. It's not normal to work that much time because who's gonna have time to go home? Like you're not
Yeah.
gonna have time to go home, and when you are home, you're not gonna be able to give anybody anything. So
Right.
no use. But what I was gonna say is, all right. You said something there that really sparked something in me. You said asset managers. Honestly, when you say that, it kind of clicked. Like all these companies, low key, are asset managers. Like
Mm-hmm.
all of them, because even the company I worked for, it was a tech company. We had IT professional contractors, and we managed those assets. They're contractors. They're workers. The workers are the asset for real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you're managing something at all times, and 9 times out of 10, you're managing an asset that doesn't belong to you. So how long do you really want to manage that for?
Yeah, yeah. Employees are your biggest asset and also your biggest expense. That's one thing I
Yeah.
learned in my career. But in terms of these asset managers, what I mean by that is like they're essentially the investment managers, right? They're in
Mm-hmm.
charge of the investments,
Yeah.
which is their second most important asset for
Okay.
someone like Vanguard.
When you say employees are more expensive, tell me a little bit more with that. Like, what happened with an employee with you?
No, I guess what I was going is that employees are your biggest expense. Like any company you talk to, whether it be a
Mm-hmm.
small one or a big one, their their employees or their workforce is their biggest expense.
If they're
And
employees, not contractors, right?
correct.
Okay.
That's the
Okay.
reason why a lot of companies have contractors, because there's certain rules that don't apply to contractors that apply to employees
Mm-hmm.
because of what they call like ERISA laws. I mean, it can get really complicated, but essentially, if you're a full-time employee, you get certain perks that a contractor does not have. And
Yep.
because of that, contractors tend to be cheaper. And that's why companies will say, okay, well, we'll bring in a bunch of contractors because we don't have to pay them as much, but
Mm-hmm.
then essentially get them to do the same work. So that's the reason why. But yeah, in terms of like any company's workforce is their biggest expense. And that's the reason why if a company doesn't do well, the first thing they start hacking is like their staff, because like it's easy for them to just say, "Hey, I'm going to lay you off,"
Mm-hmm.
as long as they do it legally. I don't believe in that. Like I think there's other non-lazy ways of doing that, but a lot of these companies they don't care as much. They
They
just say,
really
"Hey,
don't.
I'm just
Yeah.
going to get rid of you."
Mm-hmm. Like, oh, can't afford that no more. So, but okay. All right. What happened at Vanguard that made you decide to leave, and where did you go?
Yeah, so over time, I worked at Vanguard for about 5, 6 years. And I just wanted to get something different. I wanted to do something different around the area. I wanted to see what life was like outside of the Vanguard walls, which, I mean, Vanguard has a very strong culture, and a certain way of going about doing things, and I just wanted something different,
Mm-hmm.
different change of pace. So I ended up going to another asset manager, another financial firm, um, and my role was a little bit different, but fairly the same in terms of like what we helped to do. That company was called Franklin Square, which I believe is still around today. I'm not really sure.
Franklin Square Medical.
No. Franklin Square Investments.
Okay.
I think they rebranded and they're called like FS Investments now.
Okay. What was it like there? And were they giving you a better deal? Like,
Yeah, so they end up paying more, which was good. And it was a good experience initially, but I realized that the culture is not what I wanted. They cared less about the people, and that was a big thing for me. Where I want to be somewhere where the company really cares about people, and they just didn't, just have like some horse and pony show saying, "Hey, like, we really care and we give back to charity," but they're only doing it to take pictures. So, I was only there for about a year, then decided to leave.
So where did you go after that?
Yeah, so I went to a fintech firm called SCI. So came in at one of the junior roles, a junior account executive, I think they called it.
What?
And kind of progressed through there.
Why did they have you go in as a junior executive when you was already like, didn't you already have management experience?
Yeah, I think it was more because the role wasn't exact, and they like to hire from within or promote from within. So they essentially say, "Hey, like, do this role. If you kill the role, then you can, get elevated." So I was like, "All right, what's a year?" Like, I was getting compensated well. Like, what's a year? I'll completely kill the role. I'll network, and I knew I was going to do well. So I think I was in that role for like 5-6 months, and then I was promoted. I was promoted like 3 or 4 times before I left the company within 2 years. So
that's
it ended up working out in
awesome.
my favor. Yeah.
Absolutely, that's awesome. With the fintech and the account executive. Okay, so what was the highest position you held there?
So there was a regional director role that I had. So the regional director was the role before the managing director, and the managing director is like one of the most senior roles that you can have at that company.
Okay. So, regional director and managing director. So it was RM, then it was DM.
So regional manager, yeah. So RM, and then managing director, MD.
MD. Okay. So, question for you. What are some big lessons that you learned climbing the ladder?
Um, Networking is key. Like, a lot of times, most of the time when you get promoted, it's not all about your performance. Like, I would like to say, hey, I was the best performing person there, and that would be a lie. Like, I think people did better than me, but what I did better was manage my image and manage my perception. Like, they call it PI, like perception, image, and exposure. Or I'm sorry, performance, image, and exposure. So I managed my exposure really well, so people knew who I was. I surrounded myself around very talented people. My image was solid. They viewed me as that person who worked really hard and did whatever I needed to do in order to help the company out, even if it requires me staying overtime. And then performance was okay, but the reason why I was promoted is because I did the other two really well. I did the I and the E out of pi really well. And you had people vouching for me when I wasn't in the room, and I think that's critical.
That is.
So I would say I was probably one of the biggest factors in how I was able to move through the corporate ladder.
Okay. Um, what kind of profession, and this could have been at this position, like this company or any company, but what kind of professional development did you get access to with your workforce? Like with your field, I guess you could say.
Professional development. I mean, they
Like,
paid for a lot of my licenses. So when I became a stockbroker, when I became a financial advisor, they paid for a lot of that. They had access to. I had access to a lot of people. Like, frankly, I learned a lot, and maybe most of what I know from other folks that have done it before. So, they're really big on, hey, like, open door policy. Like, you can ask me any question you want. So that went pretty far. Other than that, Vanguard paid for your MBA if you wanted to do it. I chose not to go after my MBA. But yeah, a lot of these companies have access to professional development. It all depends on what you're looking for.
okay.
And I should mention I have like a hard stop here in a second.
Okay, I understand. How much longer do you have?
I am a little over right now.
Okay, so I want you to let the people know really briefly, let them know how to get in touch with you and give them your last piece of advice.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram. Instagram is my main platform, but we are slowly branching out to other platforms. We have a Discord community, a private community where you can learn all about investing, budgeting, paying off debt. It's called BetterWallet University. And then also we have obviously we're like on Twitter, we're on TikTok as well. And then we're building out a mastermind group, which is specifically for finance creators or people who love the topic of finance and they want to teach it online.
That's
And they
awesome.
want to eventually quit their 9 to 5. So we have that mastermind. So that's where you can find me. You can always email me at thebetterwallet at gmail.com, or you can also check out the website, thebetterwallet.com. So let me know.
Awesome. Okay. Okay. I wish I could ask you more questions. I appreciate you so much for coming on here and talking to us. Don't want to take too much more of your time.
Mhm.
Is there anything else you want to tell the people?
No, I would just say, just keep in mind, money management is all about habits. I think people want to become ultra wealthy, but they don't want to focus in on the habits that make you wealthy. And what I've learned over my career is that it's those simple, boring habits of saving money, contributing, as often as you can, and putting money into mutual funds and ETFs and such that help to make them millionaires over time. So, try to manage your money in a similar way, and you'll find yourself in a really good spot.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate you. I will let you know the link once everything is official. Okay.
Absolutely. Have a
All
great
right.
one.
You too. Bye.